My name is Margaret Hayes. I'm 58 years old. For 23 years, I worked as a live-in nanny for the Ashford family in their $8 million estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. They treated me like furniture, invisible, disposable. When Mrs. Catherine Ashford died last month, her son Richard stood at the will reading and laughed when my name was mentioned. The nanny? She gets nothing. Maybe a few thousand for her trouble. Then the family attorney, Mr. Lawrence Bennett, adjusted his glasses and said 6 words that made the entire room go silent. Actually, she owns the deed. The mansion, the estate, the 8 acres, all of it. Mine. You could hear 20 heartbeats stop at once. Before we get into what happened in that room, if the story speaks to you, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Drop your location and the time where you are right now in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from. Let me take you to October 25th, 2024. 10 days after Catherine's funeral. The law offices of Bennett and Associates on Greenwich Avenue. The conference room was all dark wood and leather chairs. The kind of room designed to make you feel the weight of old money and older decisions. A mahogany table stretched down the center, polished to a mirror shine. The Ashford family had gathered like vultures at a feast. Richard Ashford sat at the head of the table in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. 54 years old, silver at his temples, the kind of handsome that comes from expensive dentists and personal trainers. Investment banker at Goldman Sachs. He'd taken the day off work for this, the only day he'd taken off since his mother's diagnosis 6 months ago. Next to him sat his wife Jessica, 29, former catalog model, wearing black Chanel and checking her phone every 30 seconds. Across from them, Victoria Ashford Sterling, Richard's younger sister. 52, blonde, surgically maintained, draped in mourning clothes that somehow still screamed wealth. She'd flown in from London for the funeral and stayed for the will reading. Priorities. Her daughter Lily sat beside her, 27, the only one who'd actually cried at the funeral. She'd worn simple black and held my hand during the service. Richard's son Brandon slouched at the far end, 26, trust fund baby who'd never worked a real day in his life. He was scrolling through his phone, barely pretending to pay attention. And then there was me. Margaret Hayes, the nanny, the help, the woman who'd raised Lily, cared for Catherine, and lived in their home for 23 years. I settled into a chair against the wall, not at the table. That's where I'd always been, on the periphery, in the background, present but invisible. Lawrence Bennett, the family attorney, sat at the opposite head of the table, 67 years old, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of man who'd spent 50 years learning to show no emotion. He'd been Catherine's attorney for 30 years. Her confidant, her friend. He opened a leather portfolio and pulled out Catherine's last will and testament. "Thank you all for being here," Lawrence began. His voice was measured, formal. "We're gathered to execute the last will and testament of Catherine Elizabeth Ashford, executed on January 18, 2023, and witnessed by myself and 2 partners of this firm." Richard leaned back in his chair. "Let's get this done, Lawrence. Some of us have actual work to get back to." Lawrence's eyes flickered to me for just a second, then back to Richard. "As you wish." The estate of Catherine Ashford is valued at approximately $43 million, including real property, investment accounts, personal property, and liquid assets. Victoria's eyes lit up. I observed her doing the math in her head. 43 million divided by 2 children. That's 21 million each. Plus whatever the house sold for. Catherine has made the following bequests, Lawrence continued. To her daughter, Victoria Ashford Sterling, the sum of $12 million, to be transferred from the estate's primary investment account. Additionally, Victoria is to receive Catherine's jewelry collection, valued at approximately $2 million, and her art collection, valued at $1.5 million. Victoria smiled. It was the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her since the funeral. To her son Richard Thomas Ashford, the sum of $12 million, to be transferred from the estate's investment account, Additionally, Richard receives Catherine's stock portfolio, currently valued at $3.2 million, and her collection of first edition books, valued at $400,000. Richard nodded. Expected, entitled. To her grandchildren, Lily Sterling and Brandon Ashford, $5 million each, to be held in trust until age 30, with annual distributions beginning immediately. Lily's eyes widened. She glanced at me. I gave her a small smile. Brandon didn't look up from his phone. To Elena Rodriguez, housekeeper and companion, the sum of $100,000 in recognition of 28 years of loyal service. I thought of Elena, who'd called me crying after the funeral, who'd worked in that house even longer than I had, who deserved so much more than $100,000. To various charities, Lawrence continued, listing organizations Catherine had supported for decades, a combined total of $8 million. The room was quiet except for the sound of Lawrence turning pages. Then he said my name. To Margaret Rose Hayes, nanny and companion. Richard laughed. Actually laughed, a sharp, dismissive bark of amusement. The nanny? He turned to Jessica, then to Victoria. She gets nothing, maybe a few thousand for her trouble. Mother always was sentimental about the help. Lawrence stopped reading, his eyes fixed on Richard with something that might have been disappointment. If you'll allow me to finish, Mr. Ashford. Oh, this should be good. Richard leaned back, smirking. Go ahead, Lawrence. How much did Mother leave the nanny? 10,000? 20? Lawrence adjusted his glasses, turned to a separate document in his portfolio. To Margaret Rose Hayes, nanny and companion, for 23 years of devoted service and genuine friendship, I leave the following. He paused. The room was completely silent. The deed to 47 Round Hill Road, Greenwich, Connecticut, the main house, all structures, and all 8.2 acres of land. Additionally, Margaret receives $500,000 in liquid assets in my personal library collection. I stopped breathing. Richard's smirk evaporated. What? Victoria's mouth fell open. Jessica looked up from her phone for the first time. Lawrence continued, his voice steady. The deed was transferred to Margaret Rose Hayes on February 3, 2023, while Mrs. Ashford was alive and of sound mind. The transfer was recorded with the Greenwich town clerk and is a matter of public record. Margaret has owned the property for the past 21 months. That's impossible, Richard said. His voice had gone sharp. The house is part of the estate. It has to be. Mother wouldn't. Mrs. Ashford transferred the deed as a gift during her lifetime, Lawrence explained. It was never part of the probable estate. Margaret has owned it outright since February of last year. I felt every eye in the room turn to me. Victoria found her voice first. This is insane. You can't give an $8 million house to the nanny. Mrs. Ashford could and did, Lawrence said calmly. The property was hers to dispose of as she wished. Richard stood up. We're contesting this, obviously. Mother wasn't in her right mind. She was sick, she was medicated. She was perfectly competent when she made this decision. Lawrence interrupted. I have medical evaluations from 2 independent physicians confirming her mental capacity. I also have video documentation of the deed signing and her stating her intentions clearly for the record. This is bullshit, Brandon said, suddenly interested. Grandma gave the house to the nanny. Lily hadn't said anything. She was staring at me with wide eyes. Lawrence pulled out another document. Mrs. Ashford also left a letter to be read at this time. If you'll allow me. Richard sank back into his chair. His face had gone from confident to pale. Lawrence unfolded a single sheet of Catherine's personal stationery. I recognized her handwriting from 23 years of grocery lists and birthday cards. He read, To my family. If you're hearing this, I'm gone. And if Richard just laughed at Margaret's name being mentioned, I'm not surprised. Richard's jaw tightened. For 23 years, Margaret Hayes has been the only person in this family who loved me without wanting something in return. She raised Lily when Victoria was too busy with her social calendar. She sat with me through Thomas's death when Richard was too busy at work. She held my hand through chemotherapy when none of you could find time to visit. Victoria's face flushed red. She worked every holiday so you could celebrate with your families. She ate in the kitchen while you dined at my table. She wore the same 3 dresses for years while you spent my money on European vacations and luxury cars. Lawrence's voice never wavered, but I could hear Catherine in every word, her quiet disappointment, her clear-eyed assessment of her own children. And not once did she ask me for anything. My eyes were burning. I pressed my hands together in my lap. So I'm giving her everything that matters. The house. The only real home she's had since her husband David died 23 years ago. Richard made a sound low in his throat. You all get plenty. Millions, in fact. More than you deserve. But Margaret gets the house because she's the only one who made it a home. Lawrence folded the letter. It's signed and dated January 18th, 2023. Witnessed and notarized. The silence in that room was suffocating. Then Victoria spoke, her voice shaking with rage. This is a joke. You were the help. You were paid to be there. You didn't do anything we wouldn't have done if we'd had the time. But you didn't, I said quietly. It was the first time I'd spoken. Everyone turned to face me. You didn't have the time. For 23 years, you didn't have time for Thanksgiving or Christmas or her birthday. You didn't have time when she fell and broke her hip. You didn't have time during her chemo appointments. You didn't have time when she was dying. My voice was steady, calm. I'd had 23 years to practice being calm. But you have time for this, for her money. Richard pointed at me. You manipulated her. You wormed your way into her life, isolated her from her family. I answered the door every time you called asking for money, I said. I set the table every time you showed up for holidays. I never once told her not to give you what you asked for. This isn't over, Richard said, standing up. We're contesting the will, the deed transfer, all of it. Lawrence closed his portfolio. You're welcome to try, Mr. Ashford, but I assure you everything was done legally and properly. Mrs. Ashford was very thorough. She knew exactly what she was doing. Richard grabbed his coat. Let's go. We're done here. Jessica followed him out, heels clicking on the hardwood. Victoria stood glaring at me. You'll be hearing from my attorney. Only Lily stayed behind. She walked over to where I sat against the wall. Miss Margaret, she said quietly, I'm happy for you. Truly. Grandma loved you. You deserved this. I reached up and squeezed her hand. Thank you, sweetheart. I'm sorry about my family. You're not responsible for them. She hugged me quickly, then left. Lawrence waited until the room was empty except for us. How are you feeling? He asked. My gaze shifted to him. This man who'd helped Catherine plan this, who'd kept her secret for nearly 2 years. Stunned, I said honestly. I had no idea. She wanted it to be a surprise. She was quite insistent about that. He smiled slightly. She also predicted Richard's exact reaction, word for word. How long did she plan this? She first approached me about changing the will in late 2022. After Thanksgiving, she said something happened that day that made her decision final. I remembered that Thanksgiving. Richard had brought business associates to dinner, introduced me as the help when one of them asked who I was. Catherine had gone very quiet after that. She transferred the deed 3 months later, Lawrence continued. She wanted to make sure there was no way they could contest it as a deathbed decision. What happens now? Now, Richard will hire an attorney. They'll review the will, the deed, the medical evaluations, and then they'll realize they have no case. The will is ironclad. The deed transfer was legal. Catherine was competent. They'll bluster and threaten, but eventually they'll accept it. And the house is yours. Fully. You own it free and clear. The property taxes are paid through next year. There's a fund set up to cover maintenance and expenses. Catherine thought of everything. I sat in that conference room for a long time after Lawrence left, studying the deed in my hands. My name in black ink. Margaret Rose Hayes, owner. But before I tell you what happened after I left that room, You need to understand how I got here. Let me take you back to where this all started. November 12, 2001, 23 years ago. I was 35 years old, 8 months widowed, and so broken I could barely function. My husband David had died in March. Car accident. Black ice on Route 128 outside Boston. He was driving home from a parent-teacher conference. He was an elementary school principal and a truck lost control. Instant. That's what the police said. He didn't suffer. I suffered enough for both of us. We'd been married 11 years. We'd been trying for a baby for 5. I'd just started fertility treatments when he died. After the funeral, I couldn't go back to teaching, couldn't stand in front of children and pretend to be whole when everything inside me was shattered. I quit my job, sold our house, put everything in storage, and I applied to be a nanny. Not because I needed the money, David's life insurance, and the sale of the house had left me financially stable, but because I needed purpose. I needed children around me, but not in the classroom where I'd taught with David. Not in a world we'd shared. I needed something completely different. The agency sent me to interview with Catherine Ashford in Greenwich, Connecticut. I took the train from Boston. Wore my best dress navy blue, simple, appropriate. Carried my resume in a leather folder. The taxi from the Greenwich station drove through streets lined with estates hidden behind stone walls and iron gates. Old money, the kind of wealth that whispers instead of shouts. We turned onto Round Hill Road and pulled up to number 47. The house was beautiful, Georgian colonial, white with black shutters, 3 stories, perfectly maintained. The driveway curved through manicured lawns. In November, the trees were bare, but I could imagine them in spring. A fountain stood in the center of the circular drive, dormant for winter but elegant in its stone simplicity. A housekeeper answered the door. Elena Rodriguez, though I didn't know her name yet. Mrs. Ashford is expecting you. Please follow me. She led me through a marble foyer, past a formal living room, into a sun-filled conservatory at the back of the house. Catherine Ashford sat in a wing-back chair by the windows. 58 years old then, elegant in a simple sweater and slacks, reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked up when I entered. Mrs. Waychak. Hayes, thank you for coming. Mrs. Ashford. It's nice to meet you. She gestured to the chair across from her. Please, sit. Elena, could you bring tea? We settled in that sunny room while Elena brought tea service. China cups, real silver, the kind of formality I'd only seen in movies. Catherine poured. I've read your resume. Georgetown University. 13 years teaching elementary school in Boston. Excellent references. She set the teapot down and looked at me directly. But you're not a teacher anymore. No, ma'am. Why not? I could have lied. Could have said I wanted to change, wanted to work with children one-on-one, wanted to travel. But something in Catherine's eyes made me tell the truth. My husband died 8 months ago. I can't go back to the school where we worked together. I can't teach in the world we shared. But I still need children in my life. I still need to care for someone. Catherine was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. I need someone to care for my granddaughter, Lily. She's 4 years old. Her mother, my daughter, Victoria, is not particularly maternal. She has her own life in London. Lily lives here with me. And her father? Dead. Plane crash when Lily was 6 months old. Victoria couldn't handle it. She left Lily with me and moved to London to start over. Catherine's voice was carefully neutral, but I heard the disappointment underneath. So you're raising your granddaughter. I'm 58 years old, Mrs. Hayes. I adore Lily, but I need help. Someone young enough to keep up with a 4-year-old. Someone educated enough to prepare her for school. Someone patient and kind and present. She studied me over her teacup. Your resume is impressive. You're overqualified for a nanny position. I suspect most families would hire someone younger, less educated, and cheaper. But I'm not most families. I want someone who sees this as a calling, not just a job. I do, I said. See it as a calling. Why? I set down my tea. Because I spent 13 years teaching other people's children, caring for them from 8 to 3, then sending them home. I loved it. But now I need something different. I need to be part of a child's whole life, not just her school hours. I need to matter to someone again. Catherine smiled. It was the first real smile I'd seen from her. When can you start? That's how I became part of the Ashford family. I moved into the east wing of the house the following week. 3 rooms, sitting room, private bathroom, windows overlooking the gardens. More space than I'd ever lived in. Elena helped me unpack. Mrs. Ashford is a good woman, she said, hanging my dresses in the closet. Fair. Kind. But her children? She shook her head. They only come around when they want something. How often is that? More than you'd think. Less than they should. I met Lily that first evening. 4 years old, blonde curls, blue eyes, shy smile. She peeked around Catherine's legs when I came down for dinner. Lily, this is Miss Margaret. She's going to be helping take care of you. Lily studied me seriously. Do you like puzzles? I love puzzles. I have a new one. It's 100 pieces. Grandma says it's too hard for me, but I can do it. I bet you can. Want to show me? She took my hand and led me to the playroom. That's how it started, with a 4-year-old's hand in mine in a 100-piece puzzle of a castle. The first year was an adjustment. Learning Lily's rhythms, her preferences, that she hated peas but would eat them if they were mixed with rice, that she had nightmares sometimes about a father she didn't remember, that she needed 3 stories before bed, not 2, not 4. Catherine gave me autonomy, trusted my judgment. We ate breakfast together every morning. Catherine, Lily, and me. We planned Lily's days, her activities, her education. Richard and Victoria were mostly absent that first year. Richard lived in Manhattan with his wife Jessica and their son Brandon. He worked 100-hour weeks at Goldman Sachs. He called his mother every few weeks, usually to ask about his trust fund distributions or to request loans he never intended to repay. He visited maybe once a quarter, always announced, never for long. He'd sweep in, spend an hour with Catherine, ruffle Lily's hair like she was a dog, and leave. He treated me like furniture from day one. Margaret, we're out of wine. Margaret, my coat needs to be dry cleaned before I leave tomorrow. Margaret, can you keep Lily quiet? I'm on a call. Never, please. Never, thank you. Never eye contact. I was the help. Invisible. Victoria was worse. She visited from London once or twice a year. Always around holidays. Always with an agenda. Christmas 2002. Lily was 5. Victoria arrived on December 23rd with 4 suitcases and a list of demands. Margaret, I need my room prepared. The sheets should be the Italian linens, not the regular ones. And I'll need breakfast at 9 sharp. Poached eggs, wheat toast, fresh fruit. Can you manage that? Of course, Mrs. Sterling. It's Lady Sterling now. I've remarried. British diplomat. You can call me Lady Victoria. She never asked about Lily. Never asked how her daughter was doing in school. If she had friends. If she was happy. She asked about the house. About Catherine's health. About the estate. That Christmas morning, Lily woke up early and ran to find her mother. Victoria was still asleep. I took Lily downstairs and we opened presents by the tree. Catherine had bought thoughtful gifts, educational toys, books, a child-size easel because Lily loved to paint. Victoria came down at 11, gave Lily a wrapped box without even watching her open it. It was a designer dress, size too large, completely impractical for a 5-year-old. Say thank you to your mother, Lily, Catherine prompted gently. Thank you, Mama. Victoria checked her phone. I have to make some calls. Margaret, keep her occupied. She left the room. Lily turned to me. Did I do something wrong? My heart broke. No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong. That became the pattern. Year after year. Holiday after holiday. Richard and Victoria would arrive. Treat me like staff. ignore Lily unless Catherine was watching, ask their mother for money, and leave. I observed Catherine's face during these visits, saw her disappointment, her sadness, but she never said anything, never confronted them. "They're my children," she said once when Lily was in bed and we were having tea. "I love them, but I'm not blind to who they are. It must be hard. Parenting doesn't end just because your children are adults. You keep hoping they'll grow, change, become the people you raised them to be." She sipped her tea. "Sometimes they don't." In 2008, Catherine's husband Thomas died. Heart attack. Sudden. I'd barely known him. He spent most of his time at his office or his club. But Catherine had been married to him for 43 years. The funeral was enormous, hundreds of people. Business associates, politicians, society figures. Richard gave the eulogy, talked about his father's accomplishments, his business acumen, his legacy, never mentioned that Thomas had loved oil painting, that he collected first edition mystery novels, that he'd made Catherine laugh every morning with terrible jokes. After the funeral, the family gathered at the house. I served food, kept coffee fresh, cleared plates. Richard pulled Catherine aside in the study. I was walking past with a tray and heard him through the partially open door. "Mother, we need to talk about the estate, Dad's will, the business holdings. I need to understand the financial picture." "Richard, your father is being buried tomorrow. Can't this wait?" "The business world doesn't wait. I need to know if you're going to sell Dad's company or if you want me to take over operations." Catherine's voice went cold. "Your father left very specific instructions. His attorney will handle everything. You don't need to worry about it." "I'm not worried. I'm being practical. Someone has to manage things." "Someone is me. And when I'm gone, the will is very clear." Richard left that conversation frustrated. I saw it in his face. The next day, at Thomas's burial, Richard stood beside his mother with his arm around her shoulders. For the cameras. After Thomas died, Catherine changed. Got quieter, more introspective. She started spending more time with Lily and me. We'd have breakfast together every morning, then Catherine would join us for Lily's homeschooling lessons. She loved teaching Lily history, telling her stories about the family, about her own childhood. Lily adored her grandmother. When Lily started regular school at age 7, Catherine and I would have tea every afternoon. Talk about everything. Books, politics, her marriage, my marriage to David. She asked about him, really asked, wanted to know what he was like, how we met, what I missed most. "His optimism," I said one day. "David could find something good in any situation. I miss that. I miss having someone who believed things would work out." Catherine reached across and squeezed my hand. "I'm glad you're here, Margaret. I know this wasn't the life you planned, but I'm grateful for it. So am I. We became friends, real friends. Not employer and employee, friends. But to her family, I was still the help." Thanksgiving 2015. Lily was 18, home from her first semester at Yale. Richard brought business associates to dinner without asking. 8 people crowded around Catherine's table. Loud men in expensive suits talking about markets and deals. I served the meal. Brought course after course. Stood in the background. One of Richard's colleagues, a man named Preston, asked, "Who's the lovely server? New hire?" Richard barely glanced at me. "That's Margaret. The help. She's been with my mother for years. The help." I saw Catherine's face across the table, saw her eyes harden. She didn't say anything then. But something shifted. That night, after everyone had left, Catherine asked me to join her in the library. "Margaret, sit down." I settled into the leather chair across from her desk. "I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest." "Of course." "Are you happy here?" I blinked. "Yes. Very. Even with the way my children treat you." I chose my words carefully. "Your children are products of their world. I don't take it personally." "You should. It's personal." The way Richard introduced you tonight, like you're nobody, like you're not the woman who raised his niece, who's been my companion for 14 years, who has more class and intelligence in her little finger than he's managed in 54 years. Mrs. Ashford. Catherine, please, Margaret. We've been friends for 14 years. Call me Catherine. Catherine, I said softly, I'm not here for Richard's approval. I'm here for Lily and for you. She studied me for a long moment. What would you do if you didn't work here? If you had complete financial freedom? I haven't thought about it. Think about it now. I considered. I'd probably do exactly what I'm doing. Care for people I love. Read. Garden. Maybe travel. Would you want your own home? Someday, maybe. But I'm happy here. This feels like home. Catherine nodded slowly. Good. Because I want you to know something. When I die, you will be taken care of. I'm making sure of it. Catherine, you don't need to. Yes, I do. My children have never appreciated you, never valued what you've brought to this family. But I do, and I'm going to make sure they know it. I didn't understand what she meant. Not then. 2 months later, Catherine met with Lawrence Bennett, changed her will, and transferred the deed to my name. I didn't know any of this was happening. I kept living my life, caring for Catherine as she got older, visiting Lily at Yale, running the household. The years passed. Catherine's health started declining in 2023. She'd always been strong, active, sharp as ever. But that year, she started slowing down, getting tired easily, losing weight. In June 2023, she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctor gave her 6 months to a year. She lived 16 months. I was with her through all of it. Every doctor's appointment, every chemo session, every bad day, and every small victory. Richard visited 3 times in those 16 months. Victoria came twice. They sent flowers, cards, made phone calls. But they didn't come. Lily came every weekend, drove up from New Haven where she was in graduate school, sat with her grandmother, read to her, held her hand. And I was there. Every day, every night. I moved into the room next to Catherine's, slept with the door open so I'd hear if she needed anything. Elena and I took turns. I'd do nights, she'd do days. We made sure Catherine was never alone. Richard called in September 2024. Catherine was getting worse. How is she? He asked. Weak. The pain is getting harder to manage. Is she coherent? I knew what he was really asking. Is she competent to make decisions? Completely. Her mind is sharp. Good. That's good. Tell her I'll try to visit next week. He didn't. Victoria called in early October. I'm thinking about coming to visit. Would that be convenient? Convenient. Her mother was dying, and she wanted to know if it was convenient. She'd love to see you. I'll check my schedule. She didn't come. On October 14th, Catherine took a turn. The hospice nurse said it would be soon. I called Richard, called Victoria, called Lily. Lily came immediately, drove through the night from New Haven. Richard said he'd try to catch a flight in the morning. Victoria said she'd look into flights from London. Catherine died at 3:47 a.m. on October 15th. I was holding her left hand. Lily was holding her right. Catherine opened her eyes one last time, focused on Lily, then at me. My girls, she whispered. My good girls. Then she closed her eyes and stopped breathing. Lily and I sat with her until the sun came up. Richard arrived at noon, walked into Catherine's room, saw her body, and turned to me. Has the attorney been notified? Not, I'm sorry. Not, I'll miss her. Has the attorney been notified? Yes, I said. Lawrence Bennett has been informed. Good. We'll need to start making arrangements. The funeral, the will reading, all of it. Victoria arrived that evening, went straight to Catherine's jewelry box. I should take inventory, she said. Make sure nothing goes missing. I watched her catalog earrings and necklaces like she was doing inventory at a store. The funeral was 4 days later. October 18th. Huge. Catherine had been part of Greenwich society for 60 years. The church was packed. Richard gave the eulogy, talked about Catherine's charitable work, her role in the community, her legacy. Never mentioned that she'd made the best blueberry pancakes, that she'd loved mystery novels, that she taught Lily to play chess and let her win until Lily was good enough to win on her own. After the funeral, people came back to the house. I'd arranged for catering, flowers, everything Catherine would have wanted. I moved through the rooms, making sure guests had drinks, clearing plates. Richard's wife, Jessica, found me in the kitchen. You've been with the family a long time, she said. 23 years. That's remarkable. I'm sure Mrs. Probel. Ashford appreciated your service. Service. That's what I'd been. Service. What will you do now? Jessica asked. I assume you'll be looking for a new position? I haven't thought about it. Well, I'm sure the family will provide a reference. Richard says his mother was very fond of you. Fond, like I was a pet. The will reading was scheduled for October 25th, 1 week after the funeral. Richard told me I didn't need to attend. It's just family business, he said. Nothing that concerns you. Lawrence Bennett called me personally. Margaret, you need to be there. Catherine's instructions were very specific, so I went. And I sat in that conference room and listened to Richard laugh when my name was mentioned, and I watched his face when Lawrence said I owned the deed. The satisfaction I felt wasn't about the money, wasn't about the house. It was about being seen. Finally, after 23 years of being invisible, Catherine saw me, valued me, and made sure her children knew it. The family had 30 days to vacate the property. That was in the will. They could take their personal belongings, but everything else stayed. Catherine had been thorough. She'd made an inventory list with Lawrence. Every piece of furniture, every painting, every book. All of it stayed with the house. Richard tried to argue. That painting in the library was a gift to my father. It should go to me. Lawrence pulled out the deed. It's listed as part of the real property. It stays. Victoria tried to take Catherine's china. This has been in the family for generations. I stopped her in the dining room, the inventory list in my hand. The china service for 12, Wedgwood, circa 1920. It's listed. It stays. Her face went red. You have some nerve. I have a legal document. You have 30 days. It took them every single one of those 30 days. Richard and Jessica packed their personal items in silence. I observed them loading boxes into their car. Designer clothes, electronics, Brandon's childhood trophies. Victoria tried one more time to negotiate. Margaret, be reasonable. This house is too big for one person. You don't need all this space. Why don't you sell it to the family? We'll give you fair market value. The house isn't for sale. You're being vindictive. I'm being exactly what Catherine wanted me to be. The owner. Brandon didn't say anything, just loaded his car and left. But Lily came to find me on the last day. I was in Catherine's room, my room now, packing up her clothes to donate. Miss Margaret? I turned. Lily stood in the doorway, eyes red. I wanted to say goodbye, and thank you. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. You gave me a childhood, a real one. You were there for every scraped knee, every bad dream, every school play. You were there when my mother wasn't. I pulled her into a hug. You made it easy to love you. I'm glad Grandma gave you the house. You deserve it. You deserve everything. You're welcome here anytime, Lily. This is still your home. She cried against my shoulder. I'm sorry about my family. You're not your family. You're you, and you're wonderful. She left that afternoon, drove back to New Haven. The house was empty for the first time in 23 years. Just me and Elena, who'd agreed to stay on. I was paying her double what Catherine had. That first morning, I woke up in Catherine's room, my room, and walked through the house. The morning sun came through the conservatory windows. The floors were polished, the gardens were maintained. It was quiet, beautifully quiet. I made coffee in the kitchen, sat in the breakfast nook where Catherine and I had shared thousands of cups of tea. There was an envelope on the table, my name on it in Catherine's handwriting. Elena must have left it there. I opened it. My dear Margaret, if you're reading this, then Lawrence has done his job and you now own this house. I hope it brings you joy. I hope you fill it with life and laughter and maybe some noise. It's been too quiet for too long. I want you to know why I did this. Not to punish my children, though perhaps they needed it, but to reward you. You gave me 14 years of genuine friendship. You loved Lily when her own mother couldn't be bothered. You sat with me through Thomas's death, through my illness, through every lonely night when my children were too busy to call. You asked for nothing. You gave everything. This house is my thank you. But more than that, it's my way of telling you that you mattered. You matter. Not as the help, not as the nanny, but as my friend. Live here. Be happy here. And when you sit in the conservatory with your morning coffee, know that I'm so grateful our paths crossed that November day in 2001. You saved me as much as I saved you. With love, Catherine, I sat in that breakfast nook and cried. Not sad tears, grateful tears. For 23 years, I'd been invisible to everyone but Catherine and Lily. And now I had a home, a real home, the first one since David died. 6 months later, I'm still here. Richard tried to contest the will. His attorney reviewed everything and told him he had no case. The deed transfer was legal. Catherine was competent. The will was ironclad. He dropped the challenge. Victoria sends emails occasionally. Passive-aggressive notes about family heirlooms she thinks should have gone to her. I don't respond. Brandon hasn't contacted me at all. But Lily visits every other weekend. She brings her boyfriend, a nice young man studying architecture. They have dinner with me and Elena. We sit in the dining room and laugh and talk about everything. Lily is applying to PhD programs. She wants to study history, teach, like you did, she said last week. Like your grandmother did, I corrected. She was a teacher at heart. I've started gardening. Really gardening. Catherine's roses had been neglected. I'm bringing them back. I've joined a book club in town. Made friends. Real friends who know me as Margaret, not as the Ashford nanny. I donated most of Catherine's clothes to charity. Kept a few pieces, her cashmere sweaters. The pearls she wore every day. I sleep in her room, sit in her chair, read her books. And every morning, I have coffee in the conservatory and think about the path that brought me here. From grief to purpose, from invisibility to ownership. Catherine used to say that family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up. For 23 years, I showed up, and in the end, she showed up for me. The house is quiet most days. Just me and Elena and the occasional contractor fixing small things. But it's not lonely. It's peaceful. I'm 58 years old. I own an $8 million estate. I have enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life. But more than that, I have something I thought I'd lost when David died. I have a home, not because I married into it, not because I was born into it, because I earned it. With 23 years of showing up, of caring, of being present when everyone else was absent. Richard will never understand that. Victoria will never accept it, but they don't have to, because this house is mine. And every morning when I wake up, I remember Catherine's last words to me. My good girl. I was her good girl, her friend, her family, and she made sure the world knew it. If this story touched you, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been treated as invisible by people who should have valued you? Have you ever been underestimated by those who thought you were beneath them? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you've ever worked in the background while others took credit in the spotlight, hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. I share stories every week about the overlooked, the dismissed, and the underestimated who got the last word. Tell me, what would you do if you were Margaret? Would you keep the house or sell it and start fresh somewhere else? Let's celebrate quiet dignity winning over loud entitlement. Thank you for listening to my story. I'll see you in the next one.